From Wyoming, Wyoming's first black sheriff, his name is Aaron Applehans. He fired a white deputy who was accused of racism. Now, apparently, former, that's the key word, Albany County Patrol Sergeant Christian Hanley used racial slurs to refer to Corporal Jamin Johnson and also to the black citizens that he came in contact with every day when he was on patrol. Wow, what a nice guy. Guess he was protecting and serving just not the black residents of his town. Hanley is also accused of using the N-word and saying other very vile things to Corporal Jamin Johnson until Johnson finally quit in 2017. They didn't stop till he had to quit. Got rid of him, got rid of his job, okay? Johnson quit after the then sheriff told Johnson to accept a demotion and a suspension, thanks to Christian Hanley, or leave the sheriff's office. Now Johnson is suing Hanley. With all that he did, Hanley still got preferential treatment for promotions ahead of the more experienced Johnson. I'm so glad that man fired him. Thank you, Aaron Applehans, for being fair. Just fair. That's all, just fair. Let's go to San Jose, California, where San Jose is the first ever U.S. city to mandate that gun owners have to get insurance and pay a fee. That's right, folks. The new law takes effect in August. It requires all San Jose gun owners, all San Jose residents who own a gun, to get an insurance policy that is going to cover accidental use or negligent use of their firearm. Also, they have to pay a fee of between $25 and $35, and that fee goes to nonprofits that are helping out with issues that are surrounding gun control. Now, you are exempt from the ordinance if you are a sworn, active reserve, or retired police officer. You are also exempt if you have a license to carry a concealed weapon, or you are a low-income individual who is facing financial hardship. But those gun rights activists, they are, of course, against this. They are suing. So we'll see what happens. We hope they lose because we need some sort of gun safety in this country. From Connecticut, and the very strange death of 23-year-old Lauren Smith Fields that we've been reporting on. Now the detective first involved in the case has finally been suspended. You'll remember that the dead woman's family said that they were not notified of Lauren's death by police. Imagine the police not notifying the next of kin. Here's how they find out. They learned of her death days later after discovering a note on her front door from her landlord with a number to call. That's right, folks. Smith Fields was last seen with a white male named William LaFountain, whom she had met on the dating app Bumble. All right, LaFountain reportedly told authorities that he and Smith Fields were drinking in her apartment when he awoke to find blood was coming out of her nose and she was unresponsive. Oh my goodness. Numerous reports have noted Bridgeport police called LaFountain a nice guy. That was the reason why Bridgeport police did not even talk to this man. Do you hear me? Didn't even want to interview him because they said he was a nice guy. So here you have a death person died. There's a death investigation supposedly, and they don't want to interview the person who was last seen with the person who died. That makes absolutely no sense. Okay. All right, we turn to health news where we're looking at diabetes and deaths. Folks, in 2021, the U.S. topped 100,000 deaths by diabetes. That's for the second consecutive year. And now say the federal government needs a national office of diabetes called the Office of National Diabetes. It's a real problem because diabetes is heavily tied to obesity, and 42% of American adults suffer from obesity. It is also the seventh leading cause of death here in America. 37 million Americans, or 11% of the population, has diabetes. That's disgraceful. And if current trends persist, you can expect that 1 in 3 Americans will develop the chronic condition in their lifetime. The pandemic, as you know, has proven especially deadly for people with diabetes. Let's go to our HBCUs. More bomb threats at our HBCUs. At least 12 historically black colleges and universities did receive bomb threats. We're talking Southern University, also Howard University, Bethune-Cookman University, Albany State University, Bowie State University, Delaware State University, and more. All of those campuses got bomb threats, okay? Classes had to be canceled. Students had to stay in their dorms. University operations were suspended. I mean, it is the second time in 30 days that HBCUs have received bomb threats. Where is Merrick Garland? Where are you? You need to get up and get out and do something. This is getting ridiculous, and we're getting tired of it. Then a federal judge, as we're going to go to advertising and also race discrimination, a federal judge is allowing Byron Allen's discrimination lawsuit against McDonald's to go forward. Now, Allen Media Group filed a lawsuit accusing McDonald's of racial discrimination. Folks, it's real sad. Allen says McDonald's would not advertise with black-owned media outlets as much as it does with white-owned media outlets. And to make matters worse, The lawsuit says McDonald's created an African-American tier, if you will, and gave smaller budgets and less favorable pricing to black media. Now, McDonald's, you should know, has a budget of $1.6 billion. That's how much they spend every year on advertising. However, and I think you know the punchline. However, black-owned sites only receive $5 million or 0.3% of these funds, despite the fact that McDonald's is the leading global food seller with annual revenues. Are you ready for this? Annual revenues of $100 billion. And you all know that money's coming from us because we're eating at McDonald's. So either stop eating there or they need to step up and do the right thing. All right, let's look at climate. Why is the U.S. Supreme Court planning to block climate change that we haven't even taken yet? I mean, they just don't give a damn. It's all about the money. We got to reform the Supreme Court. The conservative court has agreed to hear oral arguments in a wave of cases challenging the government's actions to address the climate crisis. Does that make sense? I mean, it's just so silly. This is the problem that I say with the Supreme Court. I just think that we have a lot of judges that were appointed by Trump who himself is not that intelligent. He's more cunning. And those people just don't care about the country. They're all about the money. They don't care about the will of the people. They just care about themselves and their power. And it's a real problem. All right, the concern is that the 6 conservative justices are going to put up significant barriers to meaningful climate policy and will continue to interfere with democratic governance in disregard of the rule of law. Well, we know they disregard the rule of law. Look what they did with the Texas abortion case. All right, let's move on. Trump. Oh, he's ginning up his base so much with so much hate speech that the Fulton County, Georgia district attorney had to ask the FBI to help protect her prosecutors, her other staff, and anybody who might sit on a special grand jury investigating Donald Trump, who we know needs to be investigated, okay? It's all about Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election results in Georgia. And you remember at a rally in Conroe, Texas, last week, Trump called those who are investigating his business empire racist. And that's because they're all black, okay? That's why he did it, all right? Fonnie Willis is the Fulton County, Georgia DA. She's an African-American woman. She has now asked for a risk assessment of the buildings that she and her staff have to work in, plus the courthouse where the special grand jury would have to sit, as well as she's asking for security services to protect them. Meanwhile, in New York, another strong African-American woman, New York Attorney General Letitia James, she has subpoenaed the General Service Administration, the GSA, looking for information to find out how the heck did the GSA end up selecting the Trump organization to lease the post offices where he built his Washington, D.C. hotel, because the question is whether or not former President Donald Trump inflated his net worth to secure the lease. Is there anything Donald Trump doesn't inflate? He either inflates it or he lies. Either one. It's either an inflation or a lie, or he's just calling people names. Nanny boo boo. He's so petty. All right, we're going, listen, we got people in positions of power who are willing to step out on faith and to make that man do the right thing and to expose his wrongdoing. Merrick Garland must step up at an equal pace. That is what the Department of Justice must do. I'm Carol Angela Davis. Stay with me for Ask Dr. K, the International Report, Crypto Convos, my commentary, Missing, and the Slay Word. Stay with me. It is time for the Slay Word of the Week, and the word this week is tantivy. That's right, Tantivy. You got to level up that vocab, keep yourself competitive out here in the marketplace. Tantivy is an adverb, which of course means it modifies that verb, okay? Its first known usage is in 1641. Its origin is unknown. The definition is a gallop or a wild ride. That's right, folks. Let's use tantivy in a sentence. That should be fun. All right, first, the obvious one. The horse's tantivy was as fast as thunder. That's a good one. Here's another use of the word tantivy. Donald Trump and his kids, all right, are in for a tantivy, a wild ride when it comes to staying out of jail. And they probably won't be successful. Tantivy, it means a rapid gallop or a wild ride. That's your Slay Word of the Week. Use it in your sentences this week and your convos and level up your vocab. I'm Carol Angela Davis. Where are you? We are searching for our lost, missing African-American females, and with your help, we're going to find them. 15-year-old Fredasia LeBone has just recently vanished. She was last seen in Athens, Georgia, in the area of Sycamore Drive. Fredasia was wearing jeans and a white t-shirt with the word "Stay Positive" written on it. She may be in Auburn, Georgia. Call your police if you have any information about Fredasia LeBone. Where are you? We are working to find you, and with the community's help, we will.
I'm Otha Smith, CEO and founder of Tetragram, a mobile app for cannabis consumers to keep track of the products they purchase, rate the effectiveness of that product, and then share those personal reviews with others. I'm here today at Marion Main Dispensary in Capitol Heights, Maryland, owned and operated by my homegirl, Hope Wiseman. Please download the Tetragram app today and take control of your personal journey with cannabis.
Okay, we're with you with the International Report with Dr. Inyang Ebon Harstrup. How are you, Eni?
I'm good, Carol. How are you this week?
Well, I think it's a COVID. It's a COVID day, huh?
It's a COVID day. Not only is the weather gray like COVID, but I mean, we're still dealing with sick people, even if Omicron is a lot lighter of a disease. But I was reading today, and I thought it would be interesting to share with our viewers that now we've gotten over, we're getting over COVID. We've got the problem of all the waste that has been generated as a result of the disease. WHO has just put out a report talking about the vast amounts of waste that have been accumulated in the efforts to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic. Discarded syringes, used test kits, old vaccine bottles have piled up to the tens of thousands of tons of medical waste, and they're putting a huge strain on the health care management, the waste management system. So in the report said that 87,000 tons of personal protective equipment, which was ordered via the UN portal, have been laid waste. They have just gone to waste. And in addition to that, 140 million test kits that we have shipped across the entire world has the potential to generate 2,600 tons, mainly of plastic, and enough chemical waste to fill 1/3 of an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Some 8 billion vaccine doses were administered globally and were also estimated to have produced 144,000 tons of waste in the form of glass vials, syringes, needles, and safety boxes. So it didn't, while the report doesn't go on to say which are the countries that have generated so much waste, it does note that, for example, in India, of course, for example, in India, they had a lot of waste built up in their system. And also in Madagascar, they had a lot of fecal waste that had built up in the system. So you can imagine all this kind of waste is going to be a big problem for us to deal with, Carol. And climate change, with all its attendant ills and problems, I sat and I read this and I sat back and I said, oh my goodness, how are they going to cope with this problem?
What are we going to do? It's so interesting. Dr. Inyang Ebon Harstrup, with your international report, we bring you the report every single solitary week, so you know what's going on around the world. Thank you so much, Edie.
Thank you, Carol.
I'm Carol Angela Davis. Stay with me for Ask Dr. K. Folks, we have to have an environmentally friendly fashion industry, and we have to insist on it, because if we don't, we know the powers that be aren't going to do a darn thing about it, because they're all about the money. All right, fast fashion, as they call it, has caused a substantial amount of damage to our environment, because the fashion industry is currently responsible for more annual carbon emissions, get this, more annual carbon emissions than all international flights and maritime shipping combined. All them planes going up every day, all those planes you see every day, and that plus the shipping, and you know how many ships are out there, and the fashion industry is worse on the environment than they are. Stop buying all these clothes, folks. All right, if we don't stop buying all this junk, we can expect an increase of 50% in greenhouse gas emissions over the next 10 years. We cannot survive that. You know that. The fashion industry also uses a lot of water. You know now that it takes 800 gallons or 3,000 liters of water to make a single cotton shirt. Yes, folks. Dyeing requires toxic chemicals, and of course, all that ends up in the ocean. Approximately 20% of the wastewater worldwide is attributed to this process, which accumulates over time. The fashion industry produces about 53 million tons of fiber every year, folks, and 70% ends up in garbage dumps or is burned. Researchers estimate that the equivalent of a garbage trunk of clothes, folks, is burned and sent to a landfill. Are you ready for this? Every single second. Oh my God, it's scary. Then there's the microfibers that become microplastics and end up literally everywhere, but you don't even know they're there because you can't see them because they're so tiny, but you can breathe them. You can drink them. That's right. 35% of all microplastics are from synthetic materials, and plastic is very slow to break down and degrade in the ocean. And when it does, it finally creates a toxic substance that is now in the ocean, getting into the fish we eat. Okay, we're not going to win this. Fast fashion has to stop. As of 2019, 62 million metric tons of apparel were consumed globally. That's a lot. That's way too much. So let's kill our desire for fast fashion. Remember, 50% of all discarded clothing, it ends up at a landfill. The landfills start to pile up. Then the trash is moved to an area to be incinerated. Incinerated means burned up, and so there goes our air. We must stop the fast fashion. It's the air and the water that we're killing, folks. We have to work together to survive, or we are not going to survive this. It's not a maybe. We're not going to survive this because you had to have a shirt, or even I had to have a shirt. Folks, you know darn well, you buying those clothes from Style Wear, all those sites on the internet, a lot of it is coming from China, and not to disrespect China, but when you buy those beautiful looking clothes on the internet and you get them home, you know darn well they look cheesy. You can't even wear them, so out they go. Right on to the thrift shop. Somebody, come on, it's enough. We don't need all this mess. I'm Carol Angela Davis. Please help us stop the fast fashion. Okay, we're back at you with Crypto Convos with Lionel the Builder Sap, who has a crypto, I'll call it aficionado. I don't know if you like that term, Lionel, but you've done pretty well. So let's, I know you want to talk about the basics. So what's on tap today?
Okay, yes, I'm going right back to the beginning and basics. And in simple terms, I wanted to explain what is cryptocurrency. Mm-hmm. And so cryptocurrency comes from the word cryptography, which in cybersecurity, it's a way of securing data, and then currency, money. So you put those two things together, and now you have digital currency. In 2008, Satoshi Nakamoto released a white paper, which was called Bitcoin Peer-to-Peer Cash. And in layman's terms, this paper is explaining his way of solving the double spending problem that was stopping us from having digital cash. We couldn't have digital cash before because there was nothing to stop you from spending $1 at multiple places. Okay. So they came out with this thing called proof of work, which is a consensus mechanism, which basically means a way of making sure that the transaction is legitimate. And later on we can dive deeper into that. But that's basically what Bitcoin is. Like, now you have this digital form of cash, which is secure, mm-hmm. and through proof of work and the problems that computers solve, we now know that we don't need a centralized authority to make sure that transactions are not counterfeit, that account balances are legitimate, mm-hmm. and it's open source. We can see when the first Bitcoin ever was spent up until today. Wow. So that's where we're at today.
That's where we're at. And Lionel, I just want to mention, you do have a YouTube channel.
Yes, I do. Blockchain Games is our YouTube channel. And right now I'm putting out a course called Blockchain Basics.
So everybody, make sure you go to that YouTube channel and subscribe, because you're going to hear some of the same things that Lionel says here, but in more depth by going to his YouTube channel. Thank you so much, Lionel the Builder Sap. We'll see you next week for Crypto Convos. I'm Carol Angela Davis, and we thank you again, and stay tuned for Ask Dr. K. Stay with me. All righty, folks, here we are closing out the show with YOU in mind, and that's why we have Ask Dr. K with you to tell you how to make sure you're living as long as you possibly can. And last week, Dr. K, thank you, first of all, and I know you talked about that potato.
The potato. And really, I talked about the potato because it is the winter and we want a heartier type of meal sometimes. So we talked about the potato, And I want to further that discussion and say that you can take a potato and boil it and then mash it and use it as a thickening agent in any soup.
Wow.
And of course, we know that there is potato soup. You can do the same thing with the sweet potato. And other ways that you can thicken soups and make them a little bit heartier are cashews. Take the raw cashews, put them in a blender, put water in until you get it to the thickening consistency that you want, and use it as a thickener. And that avoids the flours and different type of thickeners that may not be beneficial to, basically to our wellness. Okay. And so you can make any kind of vegetable soups, the winter vegetables, the squashes, the beets, the root vegetables, all of those things, parsnips, carrots, we can use as a thick winter meal.
Very
Broth, of course, you can make a vegetable broth and store it. You can purchase a vegetable broth. And if you just want some croutons in your soup, some of the plant-based croutons that you can make are plantain croutons. You can make tofu croutons. And the way that you make them is just simply slicing them in cubes and lightly sauteing them in an extra virgin olive oil. And then you've got your meal without coming out of your journey. And of course, you're healthier, you're not giving yourself heart disease. And then when the winter emerges, maybe when we take our coats off, we'll maintain our weight for spring. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. That would be helpful. Dr. K, just real quick, we have about 10 seconds left, but I wanted to ask you this. I know that the state of Virginia, with that new Republican governor, has put this Andrew Wheeler in place as the head of Virginia Natural Resources. He was a former EPA guy under Trump. And there's the Chesapeake Bay. And I'm just wondering, what are the possibilities for our seafood?
Well, a lot of our seafood, fresh seafood, is coming from the Chesapeake Bay. But see, the thing about it is the seafood industry, even in the Chesapeake Bay as it is now, is struggling to maintain and satisfy our desire for seafood. The other thing about the Chesapeake Bay is, in addition to being a source of seafood, is that watershed on that part of the East Coast, it's very important ecologically speaking. There's an island, I can't think of the name of it, in the Chesapeake Bay, and that whole island is kind of being flooded and being depopulated. So Andrew Wheeler could potentially not only interrupt seafood industries, our source of fresh seafood, people's lifestyle, but also flooding, environmental concerns in that part of the country. So that the Chesapeake Bay is very critical to our survival, our society, our food source, et cetera. So
and I mention that too, because so many of you, you're going to throw that seafood in your soup, your gumbo, whatever you're making. But guess what? You're about to not have it, or it's going to be polluted if we don't get these people out of these offices and make them respect the climate. I'm Carol Angela Davis. Thank you, Dr. K.
Thanks for having me. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And from all of us here at Impact News, we thank you. We'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us for our weekly update on what's happening in and around the world. I'm Carol Angela Davis. Have a good week.